Hey folks, in this video I'm going to go over how to do a right slant, which is an intarsia color change stripe technique utilized in the Slanty Stripes pattern. I've already done here a left slant, which looks like this, where the color change is left leaning. And in this video we'll do a right slant, which looks like this, where the color change is right leaning. So I've got my little swatch here. I did my left slant and then I did 7 rows of main color, so I'm ready to do another slant, another color change here. So let me get ready to go here. We're going to do the same contrast colors as last time. So we'll do this mustard yellow as contrast color 1, and the rusty reddish brown is going to be contrast color 2. So we'll start with contrast color 1. And we're going to just add this color and start knitting with it as you normally would. So I've left myself a little bit of a tail. I've got my needle here, and I'm just going to start knitting with contrast color 1. So here I go. Let me pull these a little bit tight so they don't get too loose here. I'm just going to knit for a couple stitches, and then we'll get ready to do the right leaning color change. So let's go ahead and start right here. So I've knit to the place where I'd like to put in my color change, and now I'm going to just drop contrast color 1 and pick up contrast color 2 and start knitting with it. So I left my tail here. I'm going to pick it up, grab my yarn to knit, and just start knitting with contrast color 2. So I'll pull this a little snug and knit to the end of the row with contrast color 2. Okay, so now that we're to the end of row 1, I'm going to turn my work around, and you can see here this is just where my color changes. I went from contrast color 1 part way through, and then I switched to contrast color 2 the rest of the way. So I'm going to turn my work, and then we are going to go back, purl back, picking up where we left off with contrast color 2, and then we're going to just shift the spot where the color change happens over 1 stitch. So I'm going to use contrast color 2 and start purling on the wrong side. So I'm going to purl all the way to the first stitch of contrast color 1. So where that color change happens, I'm going to just keep purling all the way to the color change. Pull that a little tighter. And the difference here between the left slant and the right slant is that if it were the left slant, I would switch colors here. But since we're going the other way, I'm going to purl 2 more stitches. So I'll purl through the last stitch of contrast color 2, purl 1 more stitch of contrast color 1, and I'm going to pull these a little bit tighter. And now we're going to switch colors. So let's make sure that we wrap our yarns so we don't leave a hole here. So I got this all wrapped in my cord again. Get the rest of my ends all the way down here. So with my yarns, since I'm purling, my yarns are kind of in front of my needles. And I've got the contrast color 2 kind of on the right side because I had been working with it, and I've got contrast color 1 on the left side. So what I want to do is I have my 2 working strands. I've got this one here, contrast color 2, and this one here, contrast color 1. I just want to take them and I want to wrap them around each other. So I'll take contrast color 2 and put it kind of over the top of contrast color 1 and bring it around. And then I'm going to swap them again here. And you can see this little twist. I just put a twist in my yarn. So now I've got contrast color 1. I'm ready to go. Keep purling with it. And contrast color 2 is just kind of wrapped tightly in there. So then I'll just keep going with contrast color 2. Or sorry, rather, this is contrast color 1. All the way to the end. Okay, and then pull this a little snug. And then we turn it over and get ready to go again. So I'll maybe trade these back just to make sure that they're not tangled. And then for row 3, so we're back to a right side row, so I'll be knitting. I'm going to pick up right here where I left off with contrast color 1. So knit, and then here, since we're doing right leaning, I'm going to knit until there's 1 stitch left of contrast color 1. So you can see here I've got 1 yellow stitch left, and if you look, I'm going to pull this a little tighter so you can kind of see it a little bit better. You can see that already the color change has shifted a little bit. So in the first row, we had this stitch here was yellow, and in the second row, it was contrast color 2, that like rusty red color. And now we're going to move it over 1 more stitch. So I'm going to switch colors. So I need to make sure that I wrap my yarns together again. So here's my working contrast color 1, the yellow, and here is my working contrast color 2, the rust. And I'm going to take color 1 over the top of color 2, and then I'm going to just kind of swap them again to make that wrap. So you can see here are my 2 working strands, and I just made a little twist in them. And now I'm going to just grab contrast color 2, and I like to pull contrast color 1 a little taut here, and then I will just keep knitting with contrast color 2. Pull that one a little bit tight and keep going. And your initial color change row will have a little bit of a gap until you weave those ends in. You can see how it's kind of loosening up here. But once you weave the ends in, it'll look nice and tight. And you'll just knit to the end of the row here, all the way to the end. And that is it. So you'll repeat those last 2 rows each 1 more time. So for a total of 5 rows for the stripe, and you'll see how the color change just shifts to the right. It makes a nice little slanted color change right there.